Just lately, I'm seeing a lot of doom and gloom about the next 3D Mario potentially arriving a very long time in the future. The idea is that Donkey Kong Bonanza eclipses any chance of us seeing a major Mario title for potentially years if it turns out that it has been developed by the same team in Tokyo. Now, I think that it is unlikely that a 3D Mario will be all that length of time away, but I also think it's worth drilling down into all the possibilities and gaming out what seems likeliest. I've addressed kind of this topic before in the past, but I never took the proposition of a Mario delay too seriously. But let's now really think through what might cause such a thing and how Nintendo would respond if the next 3D Mario game were not to arrive before 2027, 2028, or even beyond. But before we do any of that, let's actually analyse how Nintendo forms its development teams. The company has long had separate groups working on different projects, and the whole home console division itself was originally just the single R&D4 project group under Shigeru Miyamoto. Over time, the team has split and split again and been reconfigured, and in 2015, we got the most recent iteration. I have a fuller video on how Nintendo is broken down, and before the end of the year I plan to do an update for it, but suffice to say that there is a team managing so-called second-party collabs, a Zelda group, a team dealing chiefly with innovative or casual projects, one team for both Splatoon and Animal Crossing, one for Kensuke Tanabe's slate of projects such as Metroid Prime and Luigi's Mansion, one for 3D Mario, which is based out of Tokyo, one for 2D Mario and Pikmin both, and one group dedicated to mobile. There is also Yoshio Sakamoto, who once led his own group, but now appears to be kind of a freelance producing entity under the broader EPD umbrella. This is a very bare-bones sketch, and it seems very clear to me that current structure is quite dated, and I would anticipate that when they move finally into their new offices in Kyoto in probably 2028, we will see a substantial reconfiguration again. However, I think people sometimes misunderstand these teams. For one thing, the groups are not all the same size and the same organization, and the source of unity is essentially at a management level. Yes, the Animal Crossing groups and the Splatoon team both come under the umbrella of EPT5, but the core development groups of each title are distinct. There is some overlap, of course, especially in the early days of both of these franchises being put out together, and as late as Splatoon 2 and Animal Crossing New Horizons, it was clear that large chunks of the art and sound team, among others, were being shared, but there were still two distinctive hubs, two distinct groups. For that matter, Wii Sport and Wii Sports Resort were developed under what's now EPT5, but they had a huge chunk of the same team, including the director return for Switch Sports, and yet Switch Sports was under the aegis of EPT4. Then again, we have Famicom Detective Club, Emio the Smiling Man, a title that wasn't officially made by or under the say-so of any EPT grouping according to public data, but rather with Yoshio Sakamoto commissioning it directly under his role as a producer. This, I think, gives us an insight into the way EPD seems to work. Senior producers have broad leeway to commission games, either from internal or external teams. In theory, they could have their groups work on multiple projects at once, and they often do. Miyamoto maintained that there was always a team working on Pikmin, and Aonuma claimed as late as 2017 that the 3DS Zelda grouping were still operational. The heartland development of games seems to come from quite a small set of groups even today. A producer, a director, a technical director, an art director, maybe a few other people, but not a lot more are required to start up a core project which will ultimately become a larger game. A video of the early development of Breath of the Wild shows the people involved, and we've heard before about the time it takes to build up a prototype before the game goes into full production. This explains to some degree how EPT5 could push out both Splatoon and Animal Crossing games in roughly 2.5 year intervals. The core groupings are different, but then when they crank up into full production, they pull in all the staff they need. And Nintendo has been flexible in recent years in terms of sourcing staff from other locations. Toei, Bandai Namco, Monolith Soft, 18 and more have pitched in to support, to say nothing of the fact that EPD has grown considerably over recent years. Yes, there is a natural limit to how much Nintendo is likely to be willing and able to split down and have multiple projects at once, but this isn't the major block. The major block is having the core team, the Heartland developers, capable of crafting a game from the ground up. But Nintendo grooms its developers over years, and in many respects, the Wii U era and the fact that for a long time Nintendo was quite controlled, quite limited in the games it commissioned, artificially held back people from progressing, it could be said. But we've seen younger producers break through before. Super Mario Odyssey director Kenta Motakura was still in his 30s when he took the chair of the Mario titles in the 2010s, and Kosuke Yabuki was still in his 20s when he was directing Mario Kart 7. It's rare but not uncommon for people to cross development groupings to form new teams as well. The 3D Mario team's Hayashida crossed over to join the 2D Zelda group's Shinomori on Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Yes, Nintendo want a balance of greybeards and young guns, but they have the breadth to offer opportunities to both. Now, where does the 2D Mario team come into this? I've deep dived the history of this group before, and I'll refer you to my video on them for full details, but in essence, they were always the young upstarts. However, they have proven capable of creating superb games. It would be easily possible to find two core groups to build a development team around. And if that team needs developers, well, you can bet that they can find them either by contracting reliable assist companies or by pulling people from other projects, or indeed by hiring discreetly just for the new team. We know that SRD and NST, that's Nintendo Software Technology in Redmond, America, regularly partner with EPD, and we know that being Tokyo-based, they are able to tap into a massive pool of talent that is outside the reach of most of the rest of Nintendo, unless the developers are willing and able to relocate. Set against this, of course, the big issue is time. It takes time to finesse ideas and to build a team, and then to go through the whole massive process of starting to build a game. Well, how about 8 years? Because that's basically what they've had if you discount a few Captain Toad levels, and to be fair, Bowser's Fury, which, while great, was a very small-scale project compared to anything else they have worked on. Essentially, this already suggests that there could be two concurrent teams based on the groupings that are already there, but I don't think we will see this spelt out too much. What I expect is that in 2017, Yoshiaki Koizumi was charged with expanding and subdividing his group, much as Miyamoto was charged with expanding R&D4 all those years ago, and as Iguchi managed with both Animal Crossing and Splatoon teams from under the same corner of his part of the EPD kingdom. Whether or not they are operationally under the same banner is immaterial. Perhaps like Sakamoto's work with Famicom Detective Club, it will be a group without a title, a sort of lone Kong and Cub band of fugitives. I certainly expect that at some point they'll snap back the curtain on the configuration of their groupings and cease revealing any more details about which number groups are working on which type of games, partly the better to obscure their workings, and partly because we know that they do reconfigure every now and then as needed. EPD1 and EPD2 don't appear to have existed as separate entities for some years now, and EPD7 may well be defunct since about 2021 as well. Maybe the Kong crew will nick the EPD7 moniker for themselves. The fact is, it doesn't really matter. I realise that at times I've pushed the idea of these groups being relatively fixed through my analyses of the game credits, but while past performance gives us a strong guide to what might come next, it's never going to be perfect, and it feels absolutely perfectly plausible to me that for a mission as vital as reviving Donkey Kong and bringing 3D Mario to their new system, that, with the benefit of the success in the Switch era, Nintendo could mount two very major concurrent projects. But That's not to say there won't necessarily be a wait for Mario. I really don't expect there to be one for the obvious reason that it would really hurt the company not to have their major evergreen Mario title early on. I expect it during 2026 following the movie, and I expect some announcement linked to the anniversary. However, the course of love and game development never did run smooth, and I expect the next Mario to be truly gigantic in scale. If you think of the multiplier that Mario Kart World put on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and then transition that to the 3D Super Mario series, well, look, games can't continue to balloon in scale indefinitely, but I do think 3D Mario has a lot of scope to inflate all the same. This brings complexities of all sorts. Nintendo didn't mean for Animal Crossing to be delayed to 2020, but it was. They surely didn't want Metroid Prime 4 to be an 8-year wait, and yet that happened. What if they had to reboot 3D Mario 2 years into their development process in just the same way? In this case, Mario could be significantly delayed from what we might expect. However, in certain respects, Nintendo can afford to wait all this out. They need not just have huge games at the start, but they want a steady cadence of huge titles. Mario Kart, Mario Party, Splatoon, Animal Crossing, Zelda, 3D Mario, Donkey Kong, Smash Brothers, Luigi's Mansion, Switch Sports, and more are all the kinds of titles that will sell hugely, and Nintendo has plenty of different franchises it can turn to in these coming years. Now, some of these have already made Switch 2 landfall, others seem unlikely for the time being, but quite a few are good bets for the next period of time. Waiting for a 3D Mario isn't a perfect scenario, but the wait for Super Mario Galaxy in 2007, albeit just a year, led to an iconic game. And 2026 already has almost certainly a new Pokemon generation and very probably some other big titles circling. Luigi's Mansion seems overdue, and a Zelda Ocarina remake would certainly hit the spot. If the next Mario were to be pushed to 2027 or even 2028, Nintendo could also, at a push, manage. But I think they would need something to be announced to settle nerves. They can get away with skipping a big 3D Mario announcement for 2025, even despite the anniversary, but the longer they go, the more severe the questions are going to be. This is not a Mario Kart World situation where they can afford to leave the reveal very late indeed. This is a Zelda Tears of the Kingdom situation where they need to reassure people that their big major title is coming. So, if Mario is destined for a long wait, I would still expect to see a reveal before too far into 2026, but with no release date confirmed. I don't think they'll confirm a long release date, I think they'll just keep it vague and let the fact that it's an exciting, huge-looking game carry them over for a period of time. They'll need something to give us an idea of the scope of the new game, and in the meantime, they will probably need another Mario game to serve as a placeholder. Now, I do expect Super Mario Bros. Wonder DLC, and it's plausible that Super Mario Odyssey DLC could also come. I know they've already dropped a free graphical overhaul, but as I'm covering in a separate video, I don't think they really consider purely graphical changes to be something that they would think enough to slap an extra price tag on just by themselves. However, a $20 DLC also put forward as a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, well, maybe, but I think it is unlikely. And there is another candidate. I've long argued that Super Mario Galaxy 2 will be a perfect mid-gen title to bolt a Plus game onto, a la Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. As a relatively little played but massively celebrated modern classic, it has huge potential for the company. I just never thought it would be in consideration for right now, as Nintendo would not want to scoop their new 3D Mario by having another 3D release right now. However, if they announce a high-effort port of this game, I'm not talking Super Mario 3D All-Stars effort, I'm talking Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury effort, then I could well see this being used as a placeholder, and in this case, the likelihood of a 2027 or 2028 release for the next major Mario would increase, although I still think there's only a 10% chance that we won't see a fully original 3D Mario before 2028. Yes, Nintendo games can be delayed, but my goodness, that would be a massive one to let slip down the schedule. I suppose the only saving grace here would be that 2028 is likely to be the third Mario movie in what US filmmakers usually like to consider a trilogy, and so it may feel like an ideal holiday to go big on 3D Mario. Also, if they are pushing Mario, I'm sure they feel they have a justification. I don't believe for a second, though I suspect many will, that Donkey Kong Bonanza will have in some way caused the delay to Mario, but rather it is the inevitable mission creep of building a truly vast Mario title that is something that will appeal to the Switch 2 audience. That, I believe, is what's causing the delay, if there is one, which, to be clear, I'm not sure that I believe there is. Slightly less Mario-y, but still Mario Brothers themes would be, as long rumoured, a Luigi's Mansion 4 in the 2025 slot. It's been 6 years since the last game, though a good chunk of the core developers were on Mario Strikers Battle League, released in 2022. I still think it's also a little early for Luigi's Mansion 4 this year, and they positioned the game alongside Switch Lite last time after the success of the 3DS title. Still, if they plan to increase the scope of Luigi's Mansion, they may not be as worried as identifying it as more in line with their handheld games, and potentially putting it alongside Pokemon in the holiday window for 2026 would match the way that 2019 went, allowing Nintendo to have a major game in this window without having one of their absolute S tier franchises for a holiday period going head to head with the new Pokemon generation for publicity. I'm not saying this is a definite likelihood, but I could see the logic of doing that. You'd have Super Mario Galaxy in 2025, Luigi's Mansion 4 in 2026, and then Super Mario in 2027. As Plan Bs go, that's B for brilliant if they can pull it off, even though my default assumption, yet again, would still be an earlier release window. I guess we'll know by how Nintendo moves in September what our confidence should be on the next 3D Mario, though. For now, why not check out the Patreon for more cool stuff, but if not, I'm just so glad you've been here, and I'll see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.